Okay, hello, I am Anto Budiarjo. Welcome to Monday Live. This is something that we do every Monday afternoon at 3 p.m. We're here to figure out what the future is for smarter buildings. In case you are wondering who we are listed on mondaylive.org. The most important...
Anto,
yes,
I'm not seeing any attendees. We had attendees, and then when you started, we don't have attendees.
yes, we have attendees.
Yeah, I'm seeing them.
You seeing them? Okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
we have attendees. All right.
Okay.
that's interesting. I'm not seeing them.
Glasses.
Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, you need new glasses.
No, it's no. Not
Okay.
doing it.
Yeah. So important point here, views expressed here are personal, not of any company or organization. So please remember that. Please post questions, comments, and other relevant thoughts on the chat, on the Zoom chat. This slide deck is available on mondaylive.org, right on the homepage there, if you want any of the links from it. So I think we mentioned this last week or week before. We are going to focus the month of May on climate change and its relevance to buildings and smarter buildings. So that is going to be our topic for today, starting this conversation. And specifically after we have our normal chit chat on news and trends, we really want to sort of have a discussion about understanding the opportunity around climate change for the buildings industry. We'll should have a lot of fun doing that. And before that, hand it over to Ken. What's going on, Ken?
Thanks, Anto. Lots. ControlCon was a great success. I wasn't there physically, but I dropped in virtually. Larger than life, probably much larger than life than I wanted to be. Seeing me on a 30-foot screen had to be scary. I was glad I wasn't there.
Whoa.
Basically, Jim Lee will provide us a little bit more information about that. We basically have I have this post on LinkedIn. Sorry about that. LinkedIn post that we want to push our month of merry month of May, the discussion of climate change. I don't know if you guys have seen this data visualization called the climate spiral. It's definitely worth a look. The other thing that has come across my desk and we posted is BrainBox is basically buying a division of Airbnb and Quebec government, and they're hanging their hat on decarbonization, which is interesting since this is the theme of our May session. So I think there's a lot of things going on there. We kind of talked in the past about how our business is complicated and messy, and probably a lot of the new startups don't want to come into it. And I think that is true. And this is probably a good way for them to interface with us, is just simply buy the markets that we have control over and leave the people in place. They're not exactly sure how some of that technology works. And frankly, from an AI point of view, they may not even care as long as they have the data. So it's an interesting transition. They bought a base of 12,000 real retail locations. Anyway, an interesting read, I think. Also have a new article on our site, How to Speed Decarbonization. And this is Justin, who is part of the SES, was part of a SES group, and he left. He went with a couple of property management companies, and then he got involved in decarbonization startup, and he talks a little bit about that. Now he's working for the owner, and so he has a good spectrum of things, and he's worked with Brad, our contributing editor, all the time. So that's interesting, and we're hoping to have Justin on not next week, but the week after that to share his thoughts. And as I mentioned, he's proud of, he supported his work of the ADEPT Adapt Launch. It's a startup to manage carbon risk. So saving and counting carbon is a thing, an investment, not an operating cost. It's interesting if you read all of their pitches, they don't sell it the way we try and sell automated controls and our services. Back to you, Anto.
Thank you, Ken. Jim, do you want to talk about ControlsCon since Ken brought it up?
Absolutely. So Ken was much larger than life in a casino sized sound stage. The conference was well attended. Probably about 150 or so people at the pre-con event, and I would say 400 to 500 at the main event. I thought that there were a lot of very engaged system integrators. I was speaking on cybersecurity and network segmentation. We had that discussion. There seemed to be a whole lot of interest around the show in cybersecurity, so I was interested in that. The other thing that really jumped out at me is several of the vendors presented their containerized systems for what we've been calling native cloud type environments. And seems to be a big trend in that direction. So Anto and this group and C4SB has been working on the IBB, as we call it, but it seems that there's a whole lot of smoke and flames in that part of the industry right now. Beyond that, people are continuing to chug forward in their businesses, and there wasn't a lot of discussion of gloom and doom of the office market and collapse or other things. So I think that sustainability and carbon are certainly still of interest to people, but I thought cybersecurity was a big topic. Thanks.
Were there MSIs there, or you mentioned system integrators?
Yeah, I think that a number of the people there were MSIs as well.
Great, thank you.
In attendance.
Jim, did you say smoke and mirrors or smoke and flame?
Smoke and flame. Bill.
Okay. All right,
Yeah,
checking.
Smoke and flame. Not that many mirrors this go round.
Hi.
Mark, thank you, Jim.
Hey, so what I've got is this. Last month, we were talking about AI, and I think we, for the most part, beat it to a pulp, and you can't go anywhere any day without seeing something new or repetitive with respect to AI. I thought this was extremely interesting that the Google CEO says they don't fully understand their own AI system after it did things it wasn't programmed to do. And I'm beginning to see more and more of this, that we are folks leading the charge of AI. No, we don't know where it's going to end up. We don't know where it's going to go, but is there something that all of us have to be concerned about, launching this and taking this through its progression? Also, over the weekend, I saw a program where they took a newscaster's body and her face, and they made an AI version of her. They recorded her voice, and then they put her talking and saying things that she would never say. And is that something we all are going to have to be worried about in the future? Here you've got a talking head of Mark. How do you know if he's real or he is an AI version? And I say, the building industry is on the verge of collapse. Not that I would ever say that, but something like that. So anyway, open for a couple comments from my colleagues here.
Yeah. Steve, I'll jump in real quick. There's this thought that back, let's say, Mark, 100 years ago, 150 years ago, back in Yellowstone days, information was the currency. It was all about getting information. There was so little information out there. And then the internet comes around, And screen time back in the 90s and 2000s becomes the currency. And I think today, to your point, the currency is trust.
Yeah.
So the fact of
Interesting.
the matter is, Mark, you're not going to be able to trust and believe anything you see out there. You're going to have to discern, and we should have classes in school. We're going to have class school how to discern what trust is the new currency.
Yeah, and I'm not sure that we actually have a system or a frame of mind to think about trust in that way. I think you're absolutely right.
Well, I think just to amplify it, right, with the advent of a lot of social medias like Facebooks and Twitters and Instagrams, we went completely the other way. When they first showed up on the, in our worlds, we trusted everything everybody, the ideas of things like trolls and misinformation was not a thing when these things first started, right? And so we kind of misplaced trust because the original work was all fairly trustworthy and fairly, until it kind of went into the dark side. And so we kind of got lulled into some false sense of security in the early days with a lot of the social medias. And it's taken a while now for, the masses to kind of, the populations to kind of go the other way, right? For the pendulum to start swinging the other way. And like anything, there's always the leading folks who start to mistrust at first and regain and do their own research. It takes a while for the larger mass to do the same pendulum swing.
Well, yeah, I mean, we had, for as you know, last couple of years, different groups purporting to be fact checkers. But then you discover that you can't trust the fact checkers because our propensity as human beings to seek power means we'll distort the facts to achieve our objectives. So to Bill's point, we don't have any kind of solution right now in place to achieve, at least a semblance of truth in a given situation. Right, there's no mechanism in all the AI and in all the ways in which we communicate to one another to validate that at least what the person said is what they believe to be true, versus things that scientifically are true. So this is a conundrum. This is a real challenge we're going to face, because now information is so ubiquitous and it's possible to generate whatever kind of reality you want to have in the moment, which. How do you know you're looking at the real McCoy?
That's right.
To that,
You already had that problem just with social media, let alone AI.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
it's going to be fun though, with the younger generation. I guess I'm going to quote somebody here in just a second, but everybody's learning what real and fake and truth is, and it's not. I think we need to be optimistic about folks being able to sort out truth from fiction. We've done it throughout history, but yeah, like I said, Monica just sent me a text saying that there was a couple of people used an AI bot on Snapchat to create a whole song with lyrics and words and music and everything to be played, and you even use the artist's voice, but it's. Everybody's learning that this stuff is available to use, and they're learning to sort through it. And apparently even Drake, some of you know who Drake is, had a song that had to be taken down because it was fake.
Oh no, it was fake because it was put together as a duet. So it was, the detail was, and my wife told me this just yesterday. It was Drake and someone else, and they combined using AI to do it as a duet that never existed. And now the question is, who owns the duet?
But but people are onto it from all sorts of different angles, and nobody is unclear about what AI is and what it could mean for good and for bad. And I think that's exciting. So it's not just the nerds, not just Silicon Valley that's understanding how some of this stuff works. People are actually digging in and learning about it, that's exciting.
And also lawyers are getting involved, because I was having long conversations last week with Luke. He's now getting pulled into all of this stuff because it overlaps with copyrights and other IP related stuff, certainly in the media world. But the point that I was going to make is that trust also is an issue, or will be an issue in the IoT and in our world, right? When you think about, a signal coming from a thermostat saying, 78 degrees or whatever it is, how do you know it really is? How do you know it's not somebody faking it to try and do something malicious? How do you know that the data coming into a particular analytics or any kind of system is actually what it says it is? And when I was at the Digital Twin Consortium, we actually wrote a paper about this that came up with the concept of trust vectors, and I'll share that in a minute on chat, the link to that.
And to be interestingly enough, Anto, that's a real thing. My cyber group literally posed that question to us a couple of weeks ago after we did all the cyber reviews. One was, how do we know that the values are to be trusted?
Yeah.
Again, I would submit that was a problem before AI or
Yeah.
It's just being asked for a much more likely reason and scenario now, right? So.
And one of the in my opinion, words you never say when you're talking in a sales pitch type of environment, and many people do, is trust me. And you think, trust me, huh? What does that bring up? Why would you even bring up trust me? Why shouldn't I trust you? But you're bringing it up, and it kind of reminds people of a study I recently saw that the typical stereotype used cars person, selling you a car that, she knows is a lemon or whatever the case is. But that's two words that kill credibility.
Okay, I just shared the paper that I mentioned. We should probably move on, but that's great. Maybe we should talk about trust in future months, because it is an important thing. Anno, you just snuck one in.
I snuck one in, just a little bit tying into the theme, and which I thought was interesting. If you haven't seen I've been watching the show on Apple TV. If you do have Apple TV, it's called Extrapolations. It's kind of an interesting theme. They take the whole climate change theme and they extrapolate it out 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, even 100 years, I think. And so each episode is an extrapolation in a different decade, right? In 20 years from now, and another one might be 50 years from now, and they kind of go in a different twist. Really interesting to watch. Some of them are a little way out there, like the Washington Post article says there's one of the extrapolations was that we had basically hunted whales to extinction beyond the last one, but we had built technology where we can actually understand whales. We got their song. We can actually interpret their song now, and we can sort of communicate. So a little bit out there. Some of them are a little bit out there, but I mean, if you haven't watched it, it's a really interesting twist on how they take climate change into different and not the same, right? So 20 versus 50, they've extrapolated slightly differently. Kind of interesting show to watch.
Wait until they start feeding whale song into AI and it figures out what they're really saying, right?
Yeah. Well, watch that episode, Tracy.
Okay.
All right. Rick, some updates from you?
So it's the whales we need to be afraid of now, not the.
It's
So
always
just real quick, collaborations. The coalition is collaborating and leveraging the connections we have to all these different organizations and finding its lane and its purpose. And I added one more on there. We're going to try and do something with BOMA, with the fact that BOMA is going to be in Kansas City for an international meeting, and that's my favorite city. Also had a coordination meeting with Big, and we're zeroing in on what the agenda for that presentation will be on June 1st. It'll be an hour with virtually with their membership across the country. They're giving the coalition the ability to sort of take the stage and talk about updates, what the coalition has been up to. And we're going to kind of highlight three things, which Jim talked earlier about the IVB. We're going to talk about the 25-25 next steps, and we're going to talk about the Young Professionals Group. And we think there's some good opportunity for some crossover of folks from the Big organization that can also come help with some of the work that we're doing over in the coalition. And then again, the next bullet was that we're continuing to do the process of getting ready to be able to go get some funding for the work that the coalition has started. So that's it.
Great. Thank you, Rick. So my update is really about last week. I had an eventful week last week that I wanted to share some thoughts that I had over the course of the week. The week started off with me going for a walk with my dog Monty, seen here in a park in Asheville. Got out of the car, felt dizzy. Before I knew it, I was on the floor. I just had a stroke. Didn't know that. Was trying to sort of figure out what the hell was going on, wondering if this is the day I was going to meet my maker, but it wasn't to be, which is I'm glad about. Anyway, I took a picture just to capture that moment. Called Layla, my wife. She came and picked me up, and we went to ER. And so about 20-30 minutes later, we were in ER. And so what I really want to share is really my experience at the hospital. I spent 6 days in the Mercy Hospital in Asheville. And being a tech that I am, obviously, other than taking care of the health issue, I was looking at the amazing tech that now exists in the medical world.
Only you would enter.
The medications, I mean, they gave me a thing called a clot buster, which basically made sure that all the clots in my brain was all cleared. So that mended me, and then a whole bunch of other things. MRIs, the miracle of science that it is, it's amazing. And the actual other medications that was going on, truly amazing. And also the other thing was that the way that the whole operation of the hospital was integrated. PCs everywhere, obviously terminals like this everywhere. The beds were integrated to everything, and so was the TV, and so was the lights. And all of the operations, all of the vital signs that they were taking, all of that was sort of integrated to all of the staff, the hospital, and the doctors that were remote as well. I thought that was really, truly amazing. Until I got to sort of about Tuesday of last week in the room with Layla and my son, Luke. We felt really cold. It was really freezing in the room, like in the 60s. And, I was looking at all these gadgets, trying to figure out, is there a way of actually controlling the temperature in this room? Couldn't find one. So I asked Luke to go and figure out, what to do about this. And he found this little puppy here. Yeah, good old 1940s technology. I took the logo away because it's not really about any specific company.
I think we all know who they are, but anyway.
And it was in a dark corner of the room, so Luke had to go in there with his smartphone flashlight and saw that it was at 70 degrees. So I told him, put it up to 72, and we were arguing with it should be 71 or 72, but it was still freezing. And we called in the nurse and the staff, and they didn't know what to do. And then they eventually called in the maintenance guy, who came in the room eventually with his thermometer laser gun, which is he felt very powerful. He was shooting it all over the place, saying it's 72 over there. And he couldn't do anything, so he was just sort of shrugging his shoulders. And he eventually put it up to 78, and it was still freezing. Right, so so we kind of kept on complaining, and eventually we moved to another room that was too hot, of course, and we had the same experience there in reverse. But the thing that struck me was the contrast between this technology that I was experiencing in the hospital with this. And in the middle of all of this, Layla was sort of saying to the nurses, "Oh, Anto will fix it. He's in the HVAC business." and to be honest, I felt ashamed. I was not feeling good about the aspect of it. So that's kind of the thought that I wanted to sort of share with you, is that we can do a lot better than this. And I know that there's lots of issues involved, and I can already see Jim Lee saying, "Oh, it's all about procurement," and Rick will say, "Oh, it's all about specification," and Steve will say, "Oh, it's a cybersecurity problem. You can't do this, blah, blah, blah," and all that kind of stuff. But, I was kind of thinking those are all kind of excuses, right? We can do better than this. And that's kind of my comment.
So
I was
Anto,
going to say it's probably not even connected to anything.
right.
It's a remnant from an old system or something.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, David's asking, was it pneumatics? Did it hiss when you changed the?
It was hissing. It was pneumatic, of course.
Oh,
Yeah, Anto, my excuse, if you want to call it that, is the boardroom. We have no presence in the
It's an
boardroom.
excuse. That's an
I
excuse.
know it's an excuse, but that's the challenge, right? So we've been working through the facilities department, and the facilities department, we know, does not have much influence in the boardroom. So that's why this keeps happening over and over and over and over again. Unless there's, unless you're like in a museum where they're trying to preserve the value of the artwork. But you would think at a hospital of all places, they would care more about because I know the operating rooms that I've been involved with, they have they do care a lot about making the doctors happy in the OR, but in the patient rooms, apparently not so much.
it probably a little bit is a testament to us as an industry doing our job very well, right? If we're not noticed, if everything just seems to magically work behind the scenes, then it's not important to everyone. They just assume it'll always be comfortable, and it's just taken care of. So I think that doesn't help things. But I'll tell you, Anto, we have similar experience, like the work we do in the restaurant space. If it's not something that pertains to the core menu or the core kitchen equipment, it's rarely on anyone's mind to deal with or spend money on. So I suspect hospitals have that same mentality to a great degree.
Well, the other perspective, I'll bring in Jim's perspective, right, Anto, after you got your horrendously, I'm sure, ridiculous bill that they sent you for saving your life, if there was another, pick a number, $5,000 on that for, environmental conditions, would you have cared?
Not as the insurance was not paying for it.
But what Steve Fay said, and Anto rightly pushed back at, hey, it's a board issue. I think that could be a nice segue into this month's theme, because if it's a board issue, then we got to language this differently and actually have topics that the board cares about.
Yeah.
Well,
And
so at your home, you will get a survey. They will call you or send you a survey. How was your experience? And you can say the medical care was great, wonderful, whatever, but my room, as far as my experience in the physical hospital, sucked, or whatever you want to say. And also, since my wife is a medical professional, when they get their JCO ratings, or JACO, whatever they're called, some ratings, they get dinged on that kind of stuff. not only the care, but the whole experience. Once you got in, you went to the ER, were you, were you taken care of in a reasonable time, so forth and so on. So ding them, ding them.
I will. I will. Thanks for that reminder of. I'm sure I will get it. The thing that sort of bugged me out of the whole thing, and even in this conversation, is that we kind of think this is okay. I mean, we're almost sort of, yeah, okay, that's the way it is. It's the board. It's whatever, right?
Yeah.
So if we are hoping to push the industry forward, right, which is the whole mission of Monday Live, I don't think we can just say it's okay. And I think we've got to sort of figure out, what that means. And I acknowledge the challenge is not simple, but we can't just say it's okay.
Yeah, yeah, it's a classic Alcoholics Anonymous. Until you recognize you're an alcoholic, nothing's changing.
You
And
are
if you-
part of the problem and the solution, right?
Well, if
I
we
mean,
know better, if we know that there's something better, then let's stop blaming the customer.
Actually, as a consultant who worked, did a whole lot of hospitals, I cannot believe we're having this discussion because before automated buildings and we put DDC in every hospital, the rationale was not, to replace the pneumatic control, was that we didn't have to have maintenance people in the patient's rooms. And so we had no touch, like that was an easy sell to the boardroom. So I think the right people just weren't talking to the board. I've never had any problems with that. We completely converted all the buildings. All our buildings were probably converted in early 90s, I would think, to total
But
DDC.
sorry,
Can't take a while.
I as a patient don't care. It was, I thought about it because I know what's going on, but most people would not have thought about it and would have just dealt with it and sort of just accepted the badness of the situation. I mean, that's the issue. I know underneath it, there's all things that actually happens, but our ultimate customer are the occupants of buildings, in this case, patients, and I don't know, we don't seem to care.
Can you imagine what their infection control situation is and how well that works?
Yeah,
If,
there's a lot of questions when I'm seeing that.
the thermostat's one thing, but what about the mechanical systems that are connected to it? I'd be very afraid. And, maybe that's an axis to push on first. With COVID, you would have thought that people would have, really stepped up on this stuff and put ultraviolet lights in their air handlers, etc. But I think it's been slow.
Anyway, I didn't want to labor this too much, but I thought this was a very interesting, kept me busy thinking about all of this last week. So
It does talk to the messaging that we all just talked about, right? How do hospitals get this feedback? How do you get the voice at the board level? And it's a new, like Bill said, there's some new language we could use.
okay, so moving on. Community board, the links, in case you want them, go to mondaylive.org. Any other thoughts or things anyone want to bring up?
I'll bring up my AI stuff when we dig into that. I'll bring in trust stuff later when we dig into trust. I'm ready to move on.
Okay. So, so we're talking about buildings and climate change. Really, I'm not here to talk about climate change per se, certainly not all the huge amount of science and even the politics of it. Let's just sort of recognize that something's going on in our planet. It is warming and everything else. And the issue, because we are all about buildings, is the relevance to buildings. So I kind of thought that the way to think about this, and maybe this will sort of structure the conversation a little bit, is what impact does climate change have on buildings? How does buildings fundamentally change now that the climate is changing the way we're starting to see very, very clearly, literally outside our buildings? And the other way of looking at it is what can we do from a smarter buildings perspective to help mitigate climate change? So they're kind of coming at it from two perspectives. And I'll leave this up for a bit and so open it up for discussion and other thoughts.
I think there's some other questions that might be missing, like saying, what does climate change have to do with buildings? Well, you're gonna need more HVACs. Okay, fine. I think another question, and what can buildings do to offset climate change? Maybe nothing. A question I would ask for people on this call who are in it to make money and change the world. This might seem cynical. I don't have a cynical bone in my body. How can I use climate change to sell my shit better?
Do good and make money.
Yeah.
Is what you're saying. Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. And this, believe it, don't believe it. Again, not getting into the politics of it all. It's out there. It's in the media. It's a movement that I think our industry could use to its advantage. Already is.
You say it's a movement. It's. I mean, it's a movement of people, but it's also some aspects of it. It's just facts, right?
When I say movement, I don't mean it in any negative way whatsoever. I mean it's in motion, right. and it's spoke of in the popular press and social media and so forth. So it's getting attention, and to Bill's point, it seems as though, and I know companies that are taking advantage. We all mention this in our marketing, that some aspect of it. So I agree. I think this is maybe one of the ways to get us back into the boardrooms, and you tie this back to ESG, and maybe we're finally getting to a point where we're getting the right level of attention, or attention at the right level, I should say. So why not make a bigger thing out of this even, right?
I think if you read Justin's article, and I look forward to his being part of the panel here, and we can talk to him a little closer about that. Coming from being a consultant and then being a property manager and then being an owner, he has worn all three hats in his young life, and he actually has the ear of the C-suite, and that's what he tells you has to happen. And we're starting to see change, and we have in Canada, we have some decarbonization goals that have to be met, and he is focused on meeting those goals, which is not the case. And it's when these people go to their high out level meetings, that's starting to be on their agenda. How do we meet our carbon goals? I'm not sure of that in the US, but it's fairly strong across Canada. So I think we're might be leading a little bit, and Europe is of course pushing this pretty hard. So we're taking climate change pretty serious, I think. I think we are
driven by the government. Okay, government is driving the significant push in Canada and now parts of Europe. In North America, while there are incentives that the government has made available, the question is, in the US, is it more forcible with compliance issues like it is in Canada and Europe, which I don't think it is yet.
I want to add to the challenge that I've seen out there with a lot of the legislation and things happening in this area. They seem to be having more of an impact on other industries, other parts of the building, the construction and the materials and the designs and, you know, a lot of other things other than controls in the piece that we play, it seems. Anyone else kind of, I think of like American Airlines, if you go on their ESG site, it's all about how their airplanes don't use, you know, put out as much as they used to and how efficient they are, and they don't consume as much fuel anymore. And there's nothing about all the buildings and everything that they have, so.
Well, that that talks to all there are ways that you can make significant impact. In fact, one of the guys, Mark, you might remember him, that we used to work with at Marina Bay Sands, Kevin Teng. He's actually now he's left them, and he's actually now got his own VC fund where he looks after some of these bigger initiatives, or chases some of these bigger initiatives. And there's a lot of things that he says that you could do, simple things. You know, you can go plant acres and acres worth of forest in Indonesia and South America, you know, and get some significant carbon offsets and tradings, and they're easy things to do, and they're fundamentally good things to do, right? We burn, and you should know this, we burn way too many forests in Indonesia at the moment, which causes all sorts of ecological challenges. And then another one that I read just late last week, apparently solar and wind has outpassed the electricity production from all coal-fired facilities here in the US. So you can actually, you know, on your utility bill, you can now request and ask for, you know, more contribution from solar and wind sources than you can from coal-fired plants. They're all big impact changes that you can do before you get to the few percentages that a building is going to provide you. You know,
Tracy, I think
Isn't building 40%? I heard a guy tell me today, buildings are 40%
Yes.
of the global, like, whatever.
Energy consumption, right?
Yeah.
And so this is one of the things that I've said for a while is Anto's thermostat is state of the art. That's unfortunately, we don't have anything new, or we talk like we don't have anything new to bring to the party. So what is it we'd be asking for if legislation or funding was brought? We're using 40-year-old technology. We keep doing our job of what we think is our job, but we're not like trotting out and saying, hey, put this in more buildings and we would have an impact, maybe a 20%, maybe a 30% impact on that 30%, which ends up being huge. But instead we sit back and we say, oh, you know what, that pneumatic thermostat, it's working, right? And we're not doing our job of being innovators and bringing forward solutions that will do something dramatically different, and then articulating it in terms of what the C-suite wants to hear is how much more competitiveness, or how much more resource savings, how much more carbon am I going to save by doing this new thing? And that's where I feel like we've got this little bit of a disconnect. We keep saying we want to use 40-year-old technology, and they keep going, well, no, I'll just go plant some more corn. And we have to make it more, we have to make it more compelling. We do have new technology. We do have new analytics. We do have cost-effective stuff, but we just keep saying, oh, you want a pneumatic replacement? That's fine. You know, I'll sell you that. In fact, I'll bid on it.
I think Mark's trying to
Oh,
say.
by the way, Tracy, I'm gonna hammer Tracy a little bit. Tracy, you know I love you, man. His thought was, bad. We're kind of doing a good job. It kind of works. That's what he said about 20 minutes ago.
That's what people think. I'm not saying that's what I think, but yeah.
I think it's, sorry. Okay, I think the strategy that's sort of evolving here in the US is we're going to wait till the polar caps melt, run over Canada, then we'll get carbon-free power from Canada, and we'll be decarbonized until we're not.
Oh, wait
I mean,
until the
that's a-
water
that's a-
hit
that's a
Disney
dream.
World in Florida, then it, you know, all bets are off. So, Rick, I'm glad that you said the second part, because I think that is core to the problem. We're not getting the messaging, the proper messaging to the right ears. There are new technologies. There's new standards. ASHRAE's pushing much higher efficiency, even rooftop units, right? Which is going to reach down into small buildings and so forth, the new standards that they're coming out with. So in addition to all the cool new technology that the controls part of it is bringing, there are some of the core elements that are advancing as well. So there are things being done. It's landing on deaf ears. And I don't think it's the deaf ears. I never blame the student. It's always the teacher, right? If somebody doesn't hear my message, it's my fault, not their fault. So
Perfect.
I
I have a somewhat different perspective on this because the problem is one of magnitude. That so we have regulatory stuff going on now all over the place at ASHRAE, at state and local governments, California Title 24, New York, Boston, San Francisco municipalities putting these rules in place. That's a lever that can work, but it's not going to be uniform and universal across the country. The problem with C-suites, and we've discussed this many times, is that we don't have a big enough impact for them to care about. If energy is 1% of what an organization does, and the carbon derived from that energy is what we have to work with, 20% of 1% is not enough to get the attention of anyone unless they have a mandate specifically to reduce carbon. So pretending that we're going to, wake up someday and that we're going to suddenly have a 50% impact or 20% or a 10% impact on their core business is not realistic. We're going to have a 30% impact on 1% of their business if we're lucky. And that's what makes the strategy of elevating this to the C-suite very difficult. And that's what makes the regulatory stuff more interesting.
And that's why we're seeing all the other things I was talking about first and foremost over what we do.
Right.
Yeah,
That's
and I'm going to say,
exactly what I was
Jim,
referring to.
for Jim Lee, I totally get it. The conversation though is because carbon credits aren't always going to be what they are today. I'm here to tell you, boys and girls, carbon credits are going to go up and up and up, just like they are in Europe and Canada. Right now, carbon credits are nothing because for some reason in the US, buildings is part of the voluntary, not the mandatory. And I think in Europe it's mandatory, and maybe even in Canada. But this is a longer term play, and carbon credits are going to be a thing, and you might as well get started now.
The other thing with carbon is this is one thing the kids taught me is, I ran Sinclair Energy Services, saved energy. They took it over as Sinclair Environmental Services, and they saved carbon. And saving carbon is completely different. In some ways, they actually used more energy to save carbon. Yeah, so this is an interesting discussion if that is your goal. The other thing is somehow the C-suite understood saving carbon. They never understood saving energy. And plus, we have some strong mandates. I think some of the stuff on chat there is David Katz has been talking about what some of the mandates are. So basically, we've got some hard schedules we have to meet, some hard goals. But again, saving carbon is quite different. And I think saving carbon is an amazing thing because it leads us to the hybrid building that is a combination of mostly electric for the bulk of its hours, and for its peak hours, we'll probably still use carbon because the electrical grid just cannot provide the amount of power we need for the coldest day. And so we'll start seeing hybrid systems. Hybrid systems will be amazing for the automation industry because now you have two systems that have to be operated and have to be orchestrated. So there's a lot going on there. And we're starting to see the turn of the tide. I think in BC, we have this unusual situation that all our energy is just water over the dam. So it's carbon free. So just switching to electric is easy, but it's a little bit harder in some of the other areas, but still worth the effort, I do believe.
So My observation is that similar to what Bill was saying earlier in terms of leveraging the emphasis on carbon for our benefit. And, you know, what Jim Lee often says that energy just doesn't move the needle in the boardroom, and I think he's right. So even though we know that's something we can target very specifically, we can address and we have impact on, because it hasn't gotten the attention of decision makers to the degree that we think it should. What are we going to do, right? Carbon has become a point of importance in, you know, because there's so many people now are afraid of what is going to be the result of pumping all this carbon dioxide in the atmosphere and what it's going to do to the planet, that it's garnered all this attention, right or wrong, but it has done that. And so it has the attention of decision makers on a worldwide basis, in some countries more than others. But there's no getting past the fact that it has achieved that result. And so we should take advantage of that because we get a double win. Whether you lower the, you know, will inevitably lower the carbon footprint by doing what we do. But one thing's for sure, we're going to lower the energy spend in most cases, except for perhaps for what you were referring to earlier, Ken, is that some sources of energy are, you know, by their nature are more expensive than others, right? That are perhaps non-carbon producing forms of energy. However, because of the importance that people are placing on reducing the carbon footprint, we're foolish not to take advantage of that trend.
Okay, there's another part I want to get out here too before we run out of time. And this is, we always talk to the people who own the buildings. And what the carbon people are talking to, they're talking to the people who provide the financing for the people who own the buildings.
Right.
So all of a sudden, when you go get a mortgage now, and we have a strong carbon goal, 2030, and the mortgage money that you're asking for, you want $50 million, $1 billion, whatever the number is, and you're getting it from a trust company or like a life insurance company or something like that. The life insurance company is starting to get nervous that I don't want to give you the money if in fact your building isn't going to meet the carbon goals in the future. So they're finding that drives the whole process more than anything. So I think that somewhat solves Jim's problem, is we now have a bigger voice in the C-suite because we're talking to the people who are providing you your funding, and they're very interested. And in fact, they're imposing carbon goals on these people. So that's on the buildings.
And
I think that's true to an extent, Ken, but not true for all verticals. Because if I bring it back to Anto and the hospital, right, I don't know how many hospitals have got any real motivations, what's driving them from an ESG carbon saving. So I think it's true, but I'm not sure it's true across all the verticals.
Actually, the hospital is one of the ones that's most sensitive, believe it or not, because they're so powered by donations.
Yeah.
So what happens is my donation carbon free? Actually, you're going to enjoy listening to Justin. Yeah.
To Justin, yeah. So I kind of want to sort of remind ourselves that our mission here is to talk about the smarts in smart buildings, right? It is about the smarts, right? And I was thinking about this last week in hospital, about the smarts of the hospital, right? Meaning all of the IT systems that's connecting the doctors and nurses and myself and everything else, right? They are not impacting how an MRI machine works or how a particular drug works, right? But collectively, what I was witnessing is that everything worked a lot better from an operations perspective, and even the nurses and the staff were, I would presume, to be much happier or much more productive because everything works together, right? So I'm wondering if that shouldn't be an angle for us to sort of pursue much more. It's not just to focus on specific carbon reduction, but to think about how the smarts of buildings can actually make the whole thing work better, and therefore it's actually making the almost the mechanical stuff work much better in combination. 1 + 1 = 3 kind of a thing.
And
My problem with that is that it's not necessarily a technology problem. I mean, Rick and I may differ on this. I think we have lots of good technology. What we don't have is business process re-engineering to go in and fix the business processes at these institutions. So when I complain about a customer being broken, it is the inability of the customers to figure out how to reorganize themselves and take advantage of these things. If you look on the medical side, Anto, they've had many years to reorganize around what these new technologies will do. And very, very little attempt has been made to reorganize around the technologies that we have. And I think that's key. One of the reasons that's true in medicine is the extreme cost of everything. The cost of that medical technology is very high, and the multiples, because the staffing prices are very, very high as well. We have here, if we can get to McKinsey, Bain, and BCG are the only ones that reach the C-suite at any level, and just tell them, look, here's another vertical where you can step and repeat. And all those great efficiencies you got out of the med tech and that side, we can do the same thing right here. And we can do it now. But it doesn't involve just putting in that technology and calling it a day. It causes you to re-engineer your business process.
And so do you know if what you were seeing was an open interoperable strategy, or was it all from a single vendor?
I do not know. I did think about that, but I had no way of asking the nurse that.
Yeah, I know. I was just curious if it was obvious.
Steve Fay, a blast from the past. Do you remember Hill-Rom?
Oh, sure.
Remember what?
Oh, yeah.
I was lying on a Hill-Rom bed all last week
Yeah,
because I
and
saw the brand.
back in the day, Steve and I and our former company, we were taking a smart controller and making that the brains, the center of operation for that room. So
Right.
all the medical equipment, and to your point, Anto, I'm cold. I want to get up the thing. You had a little control device, turn it up yourself. You're done. And hopefully it worked because it was connected.
Well, except the temperature. It didn't do anything about the room temperature. It did everything else, up and down and.
No, but to Mark's point is that had we in
Yes.
the lab environment that we set up, it ran the environment of the room. It did the blinds, it did the lights, and it integrated all the medical equipment from the bed.
I just want to, Jim, you know, we don't really disagree on hardly anything, but the fact is we don't have all the technology we need to do things in a more interoperable, more plug and play, and to impact more spaces. So that's my nuance of there is still work to be done on technology innovations and making digital assets and making digitization go further into an organization. And that's what they're asking for. And the C-suite is not particularly happy with our answer of saying, well, you've got everything you need. We've invented everything we need to invent. And I know you're not saying that, but I'm saying that taking a little bit different twist on it and saying, you're right. The stuff we invented 30 years ago is probably not quite adequate to take advantage of all the things that are possible today. And so that's the little bit of a twist that then helps to get the attention and keep the attention and give us the right to stay in the C-suite for more than a few minutes. That's my nuance on that.
Okay,
Good enough, Rick.
we're past time. Tracy, maybe I can ask you to just sort of wrap up this sort of this conversation.
Sure. So interesting start to the month of May here. And I think I can think of a few more areas that we can take some deeper dives in when it comes to architectures and technology and standards and so forth. But I just to summarize what I think I'm hearing is somewhat agreement that there is technology out there available that could be doing a better job, but it's not being utilized, that it's likely not the fault of the technology, even though there's room for improvement. It's a failure for us to get our messaging to the right ears and at the right level. So some room for improvement for the industry. I think there's general agreement here that we have an opportunity to capitalize on what's happening in the public press. And we need to figure out how to become a voice within that public press in a different way to get our messaging there. And I just to kind of wrap up, I think Jim is on track that this is likely more a business systems issue in the way business operates than a technology one, even though there's always room for improvement from a technology standpoint. So join in the rest of the month. I'm sure we're going to be diving deeper into more of these topics here.
Great, thank you, Tracy. And David Kaz, just watching his comment. I did notice that smartphones are highly encouraged in hospitals now. I remember not too many years ago when you couldn't take a cell phone into hospital, but times has changed. So very interesting. But thank you all, and thanks. The audience has been a great conversation. Good to be back, and we'll be back next week with a couple of guests. And yeah, have a great week, and we'll get a video of this up tomorrow or Wednesday. Thanks.
Let me just close with Anto. We're all really glad you're back in the driver's seat here, and glad you made it through your incident there. So
thank you.
Welcome back. Glad we
you.
weren't having other conversations. So
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye all.
Bye.
Bye.